Hi, this is Doug for another short video sharing information about family history. I've been spending the last several years hundreds of hours on Ancestry.com and the internet trying to learn as much as I can about family members and going very wide and deep. So in this video, I'm going to spend time talking about a great uncle. Presley Neville O'Bannon, and is just an incredible story. I've spent time the last week or so just being obsessed, trying to learn as much as I can about Presley. And I can remember when I first said something to my mom about Presley Neville O'Bannon, and she knew about him and the fact that he was related to us. And so I was just kind of surprised that I had never heard this story at all, and especially with its significance with his significance with the Marine Corps and U.S. history. It just kind of mind-boggling. So anyway, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Uncle Presley Neville. Just so that you know how he is related to us. Here's my generation: my dad, William Lee Bush, and mom, Julia May Bewley. Then my dad's mother is Martha O'Bannon. Okay, is her maiden name. Then Virgil Lee is her dad, so that's my great-granddad. My two-time great-granddad is George W. O'Bannon. And here's where things get a little... Oh, hold on a minute. Yeah, that's right. Let's look at this. Just so that, no, that's not what I meant to do. I'm so sorry. Work with me, computer. Okay, I just want to show, there we go. All right, so my two-time great-grandmother, Ambrosia O'Bannon. You see these blue markings here. That is tied to DNA research. I did DNA testing, and I do show DNA resemblance or relation with Ambrosia. I do not with George. Okay, I do with another man by the name of Robinson. So there's some doubt in my mind that I am blood related to the O'Bannons beyond my great-granddad, right? And so when we talk about this, yeah, I feel like I'm related through name, but I don't know that I am as far as blood relation. So anyway, my three-time great-grandfather is Presley Neville O'Bannon, who was named after this great-uncle. His father is William O'Bannon. So that's my four-time great-granddad. Then his father is Captain William O'Bannon. And Captain William O'Bannon lived in Fauquier County, Virginia. And if you look that up on a map, it's not far out of Washington, D.C. It's just west of the D.C. area, not far out of Fairfax County. It's that region. And his son, or one of his sons, right? So this would be my, let me get this right, two-time, three-time, four-time great-uncle, Presley Neville O'Bannon. And Uncle Presley was born in 1776 in Fauquier County. I tried to find a picture of his house that no longer standing. There is a marker there where the house stood. He passed away in 1850 in Henry County, Kentucky. So, born in Virginia before Kentucky became a state, and then after all this history that we're going to talk about happened, he moves to Kentucky. So let's just go to the gallery and start with this. So he dies in 1850 in Henry County. He's buried there. later on, they decided to move his remains because of his prominence to the Frankfort, Kentucky cemetery. And they have like a military hill or a mound there where significant Kentuckians are buried. He's just a little ways down the hill from Daniel Boone. And so here's a marker at his grave site in Frankfort. He later on, after his military service, served in the legislature in Kentucky. When he first moved to Kentucky, he moved to Russellville. I have a document, a census from 1810 that shows him in Russellville, Kentucky. And I have a lot of documents on Presley. I do have a picture of his house in Buckeye County. So it's a really old picture. There we go. Okay. That someone else had put up on Ancestry. So in doing the research behind why has kind of this fame or fandom around him, and I'll just put this picture of him up while I'm doing this. All right, so he's born in 1776. As early as 1801, he enlists in the Marines. By 1805, he's serving in the Marines in the Mediterranean. Now, I know people traveled in that time in history and took ships across the ocean and all that, but, you know, it wasn't easy. I complain when I'm driving across Nebraska, and here he finds himself, 30 years old, not quite, and he's in the Mediterranean. In that time period, right, United States is a very young country. We hadn't really done anything on an international scale, other than getting our independence from England. And so he's over there, and there are problems in the Mediterranean. And if you do a search for the War of the Barbary Coast or the Barbary Pirates, and it's North Africa. So the shoreline, or think about those countries that border the Mediterranean, North Africa. Present-day Libya was known as Tripoli in those days. You have Egypt and Tunis was along there, and Algiers, I believe. So that North African coast, their governments or their rulers, I'll just say it that way, would hire pirates. Basically, they would pay people to go out on the Mediterranean and stop ships and require tribute. So they'd have to pay money to be able to ship your goods through the Mediterranean. So here we had commerce ships going into the Mediterranean from the United States that were being stopped. And this presented a problem for Thomas Jefferson. And so they were trying to work out, and I'm really condensing the story. Okay, there are a couple of videos I have linked in this playlist. So if you're navigating my YouTube channel playlist, there was it's an hour-long video produced by the History Channel about this. So I'm kind of boiling things way down. Okay, so anyway, there's a problem. They're trying to go through negotiations and diplomatic channels to solve it, and it's not being solved, really. There was a man by the name of Eaton, who I'm pretty sure he was Navy, and he kind of an adventurer. He had been involved in the Revolutionary War and wanted this. I think the video kind of builds him up as trying to make himself bigger than life, to be this war hero, to kind of win a name for himself. So he gets this idea that he's going to put together an army. He's going to go into Tripoli, and he's going to try to stop them, at least, from stopping ships and demanding tribute. So what he does is he has this small group of Marines. So you have Presley Neville, who's a first lieutenant, and 7 Marine Corps members, 2 midshipmen. So we're talking 10 people plus Eaton himself. Eaton actually proclaims himself general. He didn't really have that rank, but he calls himself general. He meets with Hammett, who was an ousted ruler, okay, or member of the ruling family in Tripoli, who was living in exile in Egypt. So he meets him in Egypt. They put together like a 300-member army. I think it's 300 to 500 of mercenaries. All right, so lots of Greeks, lots of Egyptians, whoever they could get, who they could pay. Eaton was able to get some backing in money from the U.S. government to do this, but it was really kind of rogue. It was clandestine in a way, and kind of covert. All right, so not necessarily the official channels. So they put together this army and they march 500 miles. Okay, this is the other thing that's amazing to me. I mean, just being in the Mediterranean in that time, 1805. This is even before the War of 1812. They march 500 miles to get camels and everything through the desert from Egypt into Tripoli, the country of Tripoli, and they're going to a town on the coast called Derna, D-E-R-N-E. And because that is like this stronghold and where ships go out to do this Barbary Coast stuff. So along the way, there's mutiny. The mercenaries aren't happy because they aren't getting the food. You have some of them who are Christian, some of them who are Muslim, and so there's tension there that the Christians are being treated one way and the Muslims are being treated another way. You could just imagine kind of the nightmare of trying to head this whole thing up. So they get to this city, Derna, and they decide to attack. And the reason why Presley Neville is so revered is because of his actions on that day. Eaton actually gets shot through the wrist early in the conflict, but they say Presley keeps going. Now this is all kind of word of mouth. I was trying to find where someone actually wrote out a full account in detail, and I haven't been able to find anything yet. You can imagine how crazy it is. So anyway, they storm the city. They have support from out on the water from a Navy ship, I think 2 Navy ships, small, like one larger ship and one smaller schooner. So they're pounding the city with cannonballs and the enforcements. Anyway, long story short, they get to the wall or whatever, the tower, and Presley Neville raises an American flag. So this is the first instance of a U.S. flag being raised on foreign soil during a battle. And so at this point, Hammett, who is this ousted ruling class family member, right, that they're trying to get back into power, his brother is actually in power in Tripoli, and he is sending soldiers to Derna to meet them. They're not there yet. So they've taken the city. Hammett presents Presley Neville with a sword, and I'm going to say it wrong, but it's Mameluke, and you can look it up. It's a curved scimitar with a Turkish handle, this kind of ceremonial sword because of his bravery. And today, right, Marine officers carry a side sword when they're in their official dress uniform. That sword is based on the sword that Presley Neville received. The sword was lost. So I take it back. I think I found something that says that the museum, the Marine Museum actually has it. So anyway, that may be wrong. So after this is all over, you have all these other soldiers from the other side are coming to the city, and they actually, Neville and Eaton and who's left of their group, sneak out in the middle of the night. They get on a little boat and they go out, or early in the morning, under the cover of darkness, to meet the U.S. Navy and get out of there, because they decided that Hammett wasn't going to be able to win over support. They could see that that wasn't happening, that it was going to be a very dangerous situation to be there when the soldiers from the ruin, his name escapes me, arrive. And so they kind of sneak out at night. It's not the greatest thing. Okay, it kind of sets up some other things that happen in U.S. history dealing with foreign, how we deal with foreign powers. So Neville, or Presley Neville, comes back to the U.S. He expects to get a promotion. He doesn't. It's almost like this whole thing was kind of just ignored. They end up using diplomatic channels to solve the problem from there. Whether that would have happened, before that battle, maybe not. But somehow they were able to convince him, probably with a lot of money, Tripoli to stop this practice of stopping ships and demanding tribute. So Presley comes back to the U.S., comes home. He doesn't get what he feels he deserves, and so he resigns from the Marine Corps. He does serve in the artillery, I think it is, later on briefly, but then he leaves the military again, moves to Russellville, Kentucky, and lives out his life in Kentucky the rest of the time there. It's just to me, a pretty amazing story, and not one that I was familiar with. I've ordered a book called The Valiant Virginian. It is a biography of Presley Neville. I found it on Amazon. So once I get that, I can read it and learn more. I just think he's a fascinating figure. And he probably, if you talk to him, maybe you wouldn't think he's fascinating. He just happened to be in that place and had to do something. And isn't that the way a lot of greatness happens? It's just thrust onto people. I'm going to look briefly and see what else I might have in here. Here is a picture of, I'm not sure the source of this, but the style of sword we're talking about that he was presented with. And let's see. I have documents. I already have the story and biography, but I'm not going to spend time reading that right now. I think that's all the content that I have here. But anyway, like I said, there'll be in the playlist, Kentucky History did a video about him. They go to his gravesite. They go to Frankfurt, and they talk through the story. It's not quite as slick as the video that shows up on the History Channel, and you have an actor actually playing Presley Neville, which is kind of cool. So anyway, if you're interested in learning more, check that out. But that's what I know about Presley Neville O'Bannon.